The organized private sector of Nigeria says 2023 fiscal policy measures will hurt the country's economy. OPSN comprises of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the Nigerian Association of Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, and the Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises, among others. They warned against the recent increase in excise rates as contained in a circular signed by the former Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed. They are calling on President Bola Tinubu to overturn these policy measures within the first 100 days in office to save the country's manufacturing sector. And President Bola Tinubu says there is a pressing need for a comprehensive restructuring of monetary policy, explaining that the Central Bank of Nigeria must focus on establishing a unified exchange rate. President Tinubu spoke at Eagle Square shortly after taking the oath of office, administered by the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwola. Well, let's take a listen to some major economic submissions at that inaugural, or in that inaugural speech.
C'est le son de ce qu'on appelle triple canon. Ça, c'est à l'honneur du président élu, le président Bola Ahmed Tinubu. C'est juste pour le respecter. Merci beaucoup. N'ayez pas peur, s'il vous plaît.
The first legislation that I consider notable from the outgoing government, and which is where the present government or president has started with, is this issue of the Petroleum Industry Act, right? If you recall, this is a particular legislation that lingered for over 20 years.
On the economy, we target a GDP not less than 6% growth. We aim to accomplish all of this by taking the following steps. Budgetary reform, stimulating the economy without engendering inflation. Industrial policy to utilize the full range of domestic manufacturing and lessen import dependency. The electricity will become more accessible and affordable to businesses and homes alike. Power generation should nearly double, and transmission and distribution network must improve significantly. I have a message for our investors, local and foreign. Our government shall review all the complaints about multiple taxation. And review various anti-investment inhibitions. We shall ensure that investors and foreign businesses repatriate their hard-earned dividends and profits owed. My administration must create meaningful opportunities for our youth. We shall honor our campaign commitment of 1 million jobs and the digital economy. On agriculture, rural incomes shall be secured. The Commodity Exchange Board guarantee minimum prices for certain crops. On fuel subsidy, unfortunately, the budget that I've glimpse before I assume office, and what I've heard is that no provision is there for fuel subsidy.
Joining me on the show today is the Director General Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, Mr. Segun Ajayi-Kadir, to discuss some of these very important issues, particularly as it relates with the manufacturing sector. Thank you so much for your time, DG. It's good to have you on the program.
Okay, thank you, Tolu, for having me. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you so much. Let's talk about industrial policy first that the president mentioned in his inaugural speech yesterday. In straight terms, he said they need to promote industrial manufacturing so that we can lessen our import dependency. That should be a good news for manufacturers.
Yes, it is good news. And beyond the rhetorics of it, it gives a kind of confidence that manufacturers could reasonably assume that the incoming administration or the new president has an excellent perception of what every nation on earth should aspire to be. A manufacturing country is a country that is set to achieve the overall well-being of its people. So it is a strategic choice that the president has made on his first day. It is a commitment to increasing job creation in his country rather than exporting jobs to other countries. Because whenever you import rather than export, what you're actually doing is that you are exporting jobs and importing unemployment. So I think the president got it right there. And for us in the manufacturing sector, it is an indication that the manufacturing sector will have most of its challenges resolved. As a matter of fact, for some time now, Nigeria seems to have embarked on a journey of deindustrialization. So it is a relief to hear that the president is concerned about the level of local manufacturing, which has led to massive importation of goods that could otherwise have been produced in Nigeria. What we expect is that the follow-up actions will be those ones that deliberately promote local manufacturing and remove the impediments that have continued to limit the performance of the sector.
Taking it from there, electricity was also mentioned that it will be made more accessible and affordable. To me, that affordability, many will say, is relative. But what do you make of that? And what do you think are the opportunities in this for manufacturers?
Tolu, power is essential to manufacturing. As a matter of fact, the correlation you can draw is the one between what the blood is to the body. Power, in terms of our cost structure, constitutes anywhere between 35% to 42% of our cost structure, depending on how power intensive your manufacturing operation is. So for us to have a promise from the number one citizen of the country that is going to address this challenge is a welcome development. But we all know that Nigeria has never been short of aspirations and promises. But what is important is to give effect to those words. And from what the president has said, and from his body language, and from the other coordinated actions that he has said will be done, we have reasonable assumption that he's going to put effect to those words. For instance, he has indicated that there are other surrounding issues like the fiscal policy, the monetary policy, infrastructure development, security, and so on. All of these, if added to the promise of making power available you can imagine that he has thought about the process of engaging all the stakeholders that will make it a possibility. And this is coming at a time that the power has been put on the concurrent list, and state governments now have the opportunity to be able to participate not only in generation, but also in distribution. So I think the state is set for him, and we have reasonable assumption that being a new broom that should sweep clean, he will be recommitted to some of the reforms that have been made in the power sectors that didn't see the light of day, and will be able to give effect to the implementation of those initiatives that the current situation, somewhere between the DISCOs and NEC and all the other stakeholders, have continued to make impossible. So it's going to come with fresh ideas, fresh resolve, and we'll be able to marshal all these stakeholders to achieve the objective. I assume that foreign investors are looking at the situation we have in Nigeria, they are listening to the president, and they will be reassured that private investment can come into this country. They will be able to fully repatriate their profit according to law, and they will not be hampered in any way from operating freely in the Nigerian economy. Because when you really look at it, the Nigerian economy is an investor's delight, but we have put in place self-imposed encumbrances that has led to the uncompetitiveness of the environment. So I think that the president has all that is said for it. It only remains for his resolve to be committed to giving action to the words that he has spoken on his first day.
Great. Foreign investment coming into the country, the president said he has a message for them, the issue of multiple taxation. And I know that as manufacturers, you grapple with this same issue before we even talk of the FX scarcity, which many say might still be on the other side if the main issues are not addressed, particularly as we intend to take out subsidy. A lot of issues around that. But let me ask the issue of multiple taxation. In specifics, what would you like to be done to help address this? Because once that is addressed, more people will definitely want to do business.
Yeah, multiple taxation is inimical to manufacturing business, just like every other aspect of economic operations. First, it makes it impossible for you to plan, and it actually slows down your production process. It makes it impossible for you to understand from day one what your tax obligations, for instance, would be. And even the untoward methods that are being employed by different tiers of government, local governments and state governments especially, for collection has tended in most cases to limit your business operations. So promising that you are going to address it will mean that the rule of law will prevail. There are taxes and levies that are collectible by different tiers of government, the federal, the state, and the local government. But in most of the situations we've had, the operations of these have been in the breach. So there has to be a realignment of forces. The federal government needs to rein in all these tiers of government so that they're able to operate by the rule of law. They have to only resist themselves to what is collectible, what is acceptable in law. So I think for a foreign investor who is certain from day one about what his tax obligations are and the method for his collection, it will give him a lot of relief. He can make up his mind whether the economy will receive his investment. And I think everywhere in the world, a lot of countries have streamlined their taxation system such that it's able to allow the investor to predict his tax obligations. I think it is a welcome development, and the Joint Tax Board has a lot to do with making this happen. In recent times, we have had different state governments slamming on manufacturers, for instance, 10, 15, 20 million naira for payment of haulage in a single year and asking you to pay upfront. They're actually counting the number of trucks that brings your products, and they're asking you to pay by trucks. This is completely unnecessary, particularly at this time that the manufacturing sector is facing a recession. So the speech of Mr. President and his commitment to limiting the effect of multiple taxation is of a great relief. And I think he just needs to follow up this action, reining in all the agencies of government that continue to perpetrate this inglorious act that has tended to lead to the deindustrialization of Nigeria.
But for M.A.N again now, staying with M.A.N, I know there are a lot of issues this time now. If you were in the position to sit with the president now, and of course his economic team, what would be your request to, of course, ease your kind of business and improve the contribution of manufacturing to the entire gross domestic product of the Nigerian economy?
Thank you very much. I think the first message that we put across is that there's no nation on earth that is seen to be developed or prosperous that does not have a viral manufacturing sector. So the government has to, as a matter of strategic choice, choose manufacturing. And in that process, we should be able to take measures that will remove the challenges that have continued to limit its performance and its contribution to GDP that has never really been above 11-12%. We should be able to take measures that will immediately set the goals for the industrialization of Nigeria. As a country, we do not actually have an industrial policy that guides all government effort to industrialization. So it will be necessary for us to revisit the various initiatives of government, including the Nigeria Industrial Revolution Plan that we have had, but we have not fully implemented. We need to frontally bring into the picture an industrial policy that will develop this country. I think that is a major, major thing we need to act, and it has to be with the stakeholders. So we'll look at government addressing the immediate challenges that confront manufacturing. We have the issue of foreign exchange that has continued to be skewed and not supporting productivity. Thank God the president mentioned it. We are going to look at the issue of infrastructure development that has made it impossible for manufacturing to expand, particularly power. And thank God also he mentioned it. There are actually low-hanging fruits to improve power supply to the manufacturing sector. The eligible customer scheme, we want to bring it on the table. We also require that Mr. President should deliberately empower the National Action Committee on the AFCFTA to allow us to have market access, to allow all agencies of government not to work in silos, but to operate in a coordinated manner that will be able to improve manufacturing performance and be able to access the markets of other African countries. We've had this perennial challenge of operations at the ports. At the port, it is as difficult for you to import as it is for you to export. The cost of a 40-foot container, to bring a 40-foot container from Singapore to Lagos, is almost higher than what it takes for you to take it to Agbara, which is just 27 kilometers away from the ports here. So we need to crack that challenge and make it easy for our people to bring in their raw materials and at the same time to even export. Sometimes our members' products expire at the ports awaiting export. This is not what happens to a country that wants to be competitive and that wants to promote its non-oil exports. We also have the very, very serious issues like we have mentioned on multiple taxation. I think government should just come down hard on the three tiers of government. Even the patronage of made in Nigerian goods. Mr. President should lead by example. The National Assembly should lead by example. The state governors should lead by example. We should patronize what is made in Nigeria, because that is the only way you can demonstrate confidence and faith in the Nigerian economy. Mr. President should ensure that those who advise him about the economy, particularly manufacturing, are those who have recognized the cardinal importance of a vital manufacturing sector in Nigeria, so that we'll be able to put the name of Nigeria on the map of countries. It is even a matter of enlightened self-interest, because what COVID-19 has taught us is that there was vaccine nationalism, which means that it is those who have the capacity to produce that are able to take care of their people. So as a matter of fact, a manufacturing country is the one that can promote self-sufficiency. If not for the resilience of existing manufacturers, we will have seen a complete downturn in that sector. And as we speak, Tolu, manufacturing is on the verge of recession. We have witnessed lackluster performance for more than 4 quarters beginning from last year. And it has been worsened this year because the food and beverage sector that constitutes about 22.5% of the manufacturing sector and contributes 4.6% to the national GDP is under siege, particularly by the excise duty you have mentioned, which has been escalated, which runs against the roadmap that was set by government itself only last year. But for this year to escalate it, and it puts to ruin all the projections that the affected industries have made since the beginning of the year. And even the government is acting quite against what it has set itself to do. The implementation period that should have a gestation period of between 3 to 6 months has been violated. And our members are now required to pay excise that they have not planned for, that is against government roadmap, and that would certainly, we have demonstrated through scientific studies that we have submitted to government, that will lead to the extinction of this only most vibrant sector of the manufacturing industry. So the president has his job cut for him. He only needed to revisit all the conversations that we've been having and to engage the manufacturing sector in such a way that we'll be able to make our contribution to the GDP. In terms of job creation, in terms of revenue to government, we stand the biggest chance to make such a contribution. And I think government should consider itself lucky to have an ally in the manufacturing sector that has been resilient and has been operating over these years in spite of the myriads of challenges that have been put in its way.
Well, I must thank you so much. Interesting chat as usual with Mr. Segun Ajayi-Kadir, who's the Director General of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We'll keep talking around all of these issues so that as the government sets in and, get the economic team to work all of these positions, they'll get to understand them and take the very right steps that will impact the manufacturing sector positively. I must thank you again, Mr. Ajayi-Kadir. Do have a great day at work.
Thank you, Tolu. Thank you for having me.